Hello, I'm going to present a study on desalination and its environmental effects. The work has been done by Peter Inyels, Ruben Ohannesyan and myself, Georgios Avgeropoulos, and it is a case study of Cyprus. This is the outline of today's presentation. First, an introduction will be given, followed by some theoretical background. Then, the modeling procedure will be briefly described, and finally, there will be some discussion. By desalination, we typically mean the conversion of seawater to potable water, and it is a thriving industry in particular regions, especially in the Middle East and the Mediterranean. The main problem to be tackled carefully is its energy intensity, which can lead to high carbon footprint if it derives from fossil fuel-fired power plants. There is also an issue with brine disposal, but this is not considered in this study. This project examines possible future scenarios for the desalination industry in Cyprus based on environmental and economic impacts. To do so, the energy requirements are first investigated, then the CO2 emissions are calculated based on different energy sources, and finally the scenarios are assessed and compared on an economic basis. The study covers the Greek part of Cyprus, which is a European Union member state located in eastern Mediterranean. It is populated by roughly 800,000 people. Its climate is subtropical and semi-arid, and its high level of sunshine leads to a significant solar power potential. The very high tourism activity, along with the agricultural sector and climate change, put really high pressure on the water reserves, and a plethora of dams have been built to store water. These diamonds indicate where the existing desalination plants are located on the island. The two dominant desalination technologies are reverse osmosis and multi-stage flash desalination. The first one relies on kinetic energy application, while the second one on heat exchange and thermodynamic processes. This model considers reverse osmosis. Renewables can contribute to the desalination process by producing either electricity to drive the kinetic energy applications or heat to be used directly in thermodynamic procedures. This study includes wind power, photovoltaic, and concentrated solar power for electricity generation. Currently, there are two reverse osmosis desalination plants in Cyprus, both located in Larnaca. They are subject to the so-called BOOT system regulation, standing for Build, Own, Operate and Transfer. Power generation in Cyprus relies entirely on imported oil. However, there is significant solar and wind power potential that could contribute a large share to the national energy mix in the future. Biofuel production doesn't constitute a feasible option due to lack of large farmlands and water scarcity. In this map, you can see the annual solar irradiation in Cyprus, which is quite intense, especially in the southern part. This map shows the average wind speed. Further studies will reveal more analytical data in the future. Coming to our modeling approach, the analysis is split in two time periods. First, we have the analysis for the years from 2011 to 2013, while the second part runs from 2031 to 2050. The model considers the increase of population in Cyprus, which naturally leads to augmented water demand, the decrease of natural water supply due to climate change, and the demand deficit is met by desalination. This chart depicts the previously mentioned trends. On the horizontal axis, you can see the horizon, while on the vertical axis, on the left side, there is the population change. On the right side, the annual water demand follows the population increase, the natural supply constantly declines, and thus the need for desalinated water increases. The existing desalination plants consume 4.5 kWh per cubic meter of water produced, while the new ones are a bit more efficient and the respective consumption ratio is equal to 4. The formulated scenarios took into account the current use of fossil fuel as well as particular capacity factors for PV, CSP and wind power in Cyprus. Playing around with the share of each technology in the power generation, 17 scenarios were finally formulated. In this graph, you can see the breakdown of each scenario. Here you have the numerical values considered in this model. It's worth noting that these figures are considered stable over time. Each of the previously shown scenarios was reanalyzed for a CO2 price twice as high as the existing cost, doubling the total number of cases. At this point, I will present the results for selected scenarios, starting with the effect of the share of fossil fuel use on the accumulated CO2 emissions and cost. As it can be observed here, the decline in the share of fossil fuel use leads to a proportionate decrease in the CO2 emissions. It has to be mentioned, though, that in the first time period, the aggregate carbon footprint cannot be totally eliminated, since we have set 2010 as the base year. Regarding the accumulated cost, as you can see, the higher the use of renewables, the higher the capital cost and the lower the annual increase. All the trends converge fully at almost exactly the same point, which is roughly 16 to 17 years after the beginning of our analysis. After the intersection point, the lower the share of fossil fuels, the lower the cost. All these trends consider equal share of each renewable. Now we'll see how the accumulated cost is affected by the penetration of different renewable energy technologies in the system. In this case, its name denotes the exclusion of one technology and the division of the share of the renewables in the remaining two. It is clearly observed that excluding wind power is definitely not a good option, while the most cost-effective solution is in the long run, is the energy mix without CSP. Finally, let's take a look at the effect of CO2 tax on accumulated cost for two selected cases. As this chart demonstrates, doubling the price of CO2 wouldn't have a significant impact in our case. What it would actually do is to rapid the process of convergence in favor of renewables by a few years. The conclusion that can be drawn from the current analysis is that both from an economic and from an environmental point of view, the most competitive scenario is investing entirely in renewables but not CSP, while the business as usual scenario is the worst case. Taking everything into account, it is concluded that high investments in renewables have to be pursued since they will have a decent payback time, but only PV and wind power must be considered in the plan. So, this is it. Thank you for your attention. Feel free to post your questions.